what's going on? As you know, we are big fans of the L-mount Alliance here at Tech360, or at least I am, for that matter. You know, the Panasonic S1R, which we used quite extensively, the Leica SL, the newly announced SL2, but Sigma has entered the game, the L-mount Alliance, not just with lenses, but with their camera. We have with us the first impressions of the Sigma FP. Now, I'm not going to do a full review on this. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about my initial impressions, what I think about the build quality, the initial image quality, some of the features, some of the specs. We'll do a full review with pretty much all the accessories you can get with the camera, because this is a very modular based system, different lenses. But for just now, just talk to you through a little bit of what makes the FP so special. All right, let's get down to it. Now, we like funky cameras here, and you know, the Sigma FP is pretty much one of those kind of funky, quirky cameras, but a lot of tech inside of it. And it's been fun to shoot with, I'll be honest with you. It's been a lot of fun, and it's the smallest full-frame camera system on the market, okay? 14.9 ounces. I mean, this is very small. Now, as you can see within my hand right now, I have it with some accessories that make it a little bit larger. But when I take this all off, you're gonna see that this is relatively the same size or close to it as the A6000 series from Sony or thereabouts, or any other APS-C system out there. But it's a full frame system. But because of the size of it, there are some things that Sigma left out, which we'll talk about in the specs portion of it. But just overall initial impressions, build quality is fantastic. It's magnesium alloy. Sigma makes their own magnesium alloy. They have their own factory that does this. If you ever use the Sigma Quattro H or the DPs, you know that kind of quality that Sigma makes in their cameras and their lenses that carries over into the FP. So the first moment you pick this up, you're gonna go, wow, this feels really good in the hand. But let's get on to some specs in this thing. Now, you get a 24.6 Bayer full frame sensor on this. Now, I say Bayer because Sigma's known for the Foveon sensors. The Sigma Quattro H, the other DP Quattros, they all have the Foveon sensor. Now, Foveon, if you kind of know your sensors, you know this is sort of a cult classic, a cult favorite within the Sigma community, because that sensor reads in full color. When you take normal images, the colors are vibrant, they're beautiful. And it's unlike anything we've seen out of a full frame, basic CMOS sensor. However, for the FP, for this variant, they have the Bayer sensor. So it pretty much reads like other sensors out there, black and white, then the processor kind of takes over and colorizes it based on whatever the processor that you're using for it. What else inside of it? You've got ISO up to 102,400. Again, you're never gonna use 102,400, but it's there if you need it. You can go up to 18 frames per second on this in burst mode. And you can also do tracking, you got eye tracking, face tracking, all that kind of stuff. But here's the one caveat about this camera in terms of photography. It's electronic shutter only, and it's electronic stabilization. No IBIS, no mechanical shutter. So for those of you who are worried about rolling shutter effect, it does a good job of correcting itself, but there will be times that you're going to have to adjust based on your shooting preferences, because it can show up. But for the most part, from my initial impressions, I haven't found it to be a problem at all in the things that I shoot. And I'm using mainly for street photography, still photography. I'm not shooting any sports with this thing, even though it can shoot burst mode at 18 frames per second. The autofocusing isn't going to be at a Sony level or a Canon level or a Nikon level. It's slightly below that. I would say, Sigma will always probably update this with firmware updates in the future, but as of right now, it's decent, but it's not going to blow your mind in terms of its autofocusing capabilities. But good enough for portraiture or anything basic kind of shots, no issues at all with that. Battery life it's good, it's decent. It's not going to be an all-day kind of battery king where you're gonna shoot thousands of photos, but it will get you throughout the day if you use it sparingly. But you can charge it by USB-C, because there is a USB-C port on this. So you have that available for you. So if you need a power bank, you want to charge it on the go, you can do that. And it charges relatively fast. What else on the camera? There's no viewfinder. Well, there is on this one because I have attached it. In terms of display, you have a 3.15 inch, 2.1 million dot display in the back of it. It is not swivelable, it is not movable. It's a decent display. However, when you are looking at images on this, I do find them not to be as sharp as what you're gonna find on your computer or on your tablet, or however you're gonna view your images. So you do have to take that in mind. However, when you pop on this massive viewfinder, the images takes a moment for them to kind of sharpen up. When they do, then you see how beautiful they can be. But again, This display will not do the images justice, so don't just judge the image by this alone. You've got ventilation around it because, of course, this is not just a photographer's camera, this is also a cinema camera. But in terms of all the design, one thing you're gonna notice is that you have a button on the top, cine and still, because once you go into cine mode, this becomes a full-fledged video camera because now you have a Cine Raw DNG camera that can record up to 12-bit externally, but you can also shoot to 4K 30 frames per second internally on this. And for you 24p fans out there, yes, it is included. You have a lot of variables we can do with a video on this. And for a lot of people out there, this is going to be the ultimate gimbal camera. It's small, it's lightweight, it can fit on a lot of smaller gimbals out there on the market, but it's such a modular design that you can build it out to work with Sigma Cine lenses or other cinema lenses out there on the marketplace, like Leicas, for example. You just use the adapter, you pop it on because it is L-mount, okay? So you can put on those really crazy expensive Leica Cine lenses, which is about 46,000 and change for one lens. Yes, I've shot with it. I know it's a beautiful lens. You can put that on this as well. So there's a lot of things you can do with this. And also, this can also be an external viewfinder for a director's viewfinder. So it has those capabilities to do a lot of things with this camera. Now, I haven't gone into all that. That will be something I do in the full review. Initial impressions on the video? It's good, good quality, not bad at all. But one thing to know about when you shoot in 120 frames per second on this, because you can do that at a 1080, is that you're not going to see that slow motion effect on the playback on this camera. You're gonna have to do that in post. So do take that in mind, but we'll go through all those videos in the full review. Anyway, now while I really enjoy shooting with this camera, there are some things I feel that could be improved. But in terms of the ergonomics, this rear dial right here is very easy to move. Now, in the menu system, you can change this to whatever be like your shutter, your aperture, depending on whatever mode you're in, but you can't lock this, or you can't not have it be nothing. So what happens for me is I have it set to exposure because that's all I can, because I'd rather have my aperture here because this is much more of a tactile feel, is my exposure is all over the place constantly when I'm shooting. Now, I don't know if it's just the certain build of this camera that I'm using specifically, or if it's something that is common with other FPs out there. And if you're an FP user, let me know in the comment section below. But I really am frustrated that this wheel is just too easy to move. I wish there was a lock button or a lock feature, or at least I can just turn off the functionality of it, but that's one issue. The buttons don't have really a tactile feel to them, so I really don't know what I'm pushing at any point in time. I'm trying to memorize the button placement as I'm looking through the viewfinder, but it's a little bit challenging. Now, of course, if I'm not using this, I'm just using the rear display, I can see the buttons, but when I'm up here like this, I can't see anything. So it's really a guesstimation on that. Another thing is the menu system. The menu system is overall, it's pretty intuitive, but it's not touch. And it's kind of funny because it is a touch display. You think because that display is so large on the camera that this would be the whole entire system and UI would be touch friendly, but it's not. It's kind of like they've taken a cue from Sony, where you can touch the focus and stuff like that, but you can't touch to select the menu system. So maybe this can be updated in a firmware update from Sigma, and hopefully they can do it because it really makes it frustrating. You know, I mean, when you're using a viewfinder like this, then you got to rely on dials and wheels, and it just becomes it's not the most user-friendly thing to do out there. So what's this camera like to use? In a way, it kind of reminds me of the Sigma SD Quattro H. I tested that before I got a hold of this because I wanted to see what a Sigma camera, how it worked, how the menu system was like, you know, all those kind of things. It has a little bit of that DNA from that camera, but of course it's a lot faster, and the low light performance is a lot better, trust me. The Quattro H was like, anything above 200 ISO, you're pretty much dead. You ain't gonna use it in low light, right? But this is a lot better in that regard. But it's got a little bit of that quirkiness to it, and because it doesn't have an EVF, and then you have this viewfinder attachment that makes it look like something out of like the 1940s or 50s, but of course more modernized. It does change the way you shoot, and it makes photography a little bit more exciting and a little bit more challenging at the same time, because when you shoot with this, for example, you know, you've got this cap you have to take off that hangs here, and it tells you don't do this in direct sunlight because it is a magnifying glass for all intents and purposes. It's basically magnifying the rear display. But you gotta hold it like this, and you gotta move around, and you gotta shoot. Because it blocks out all exterior light, and this eye cup really just seals up on your eye, and you got a great big diopter, so whatever eye problems you have, this will correct it. it does, you know what I mean? You can't just shoot low shots like that because you have no idea what you're gonna shoot. So you almost have to get down and shoot this way to get that shot. It's fun, it's unique, but I found myself sometimes taking this off, and you can do it basically by using a coin or whatever screw you have. You can just take this piece off and then it becomes the rear screen is how you view it. I also have on this is the external hot shoe attachment. And this is a bit odd because you thought to myself, well, hot shoes are usually built in on the camera. And I kind of wish they did that in the center so you could have put like maybe a small EVF on there and just use it that way, like how other cameras are doing it. But no, Sigma doesn't think conventionally. They've got the hot shoe on the side of it, which I guess if you want to put a mic here, you can do that, or a monitor, you can do that as well. But it does sort of make it a bit challenging to access certain ports on that. Yeah, it's no optional EVF that you can put there to even make it, let's say, if you want to look that way, you can't do that right now. Maybe they'll design that in the future. Also, there's various different grips you can get with this. I believe Small Rig is coming out with something if they haven't already for the Sigma FP. So there's a lot of attachments you can put onto the FP to really make it your own, depending on how you want to shoot. But that's kind of what the gist of the FP is. It's a camera that you can make it whatever you want it to be. The basics are inside of it. The technology is there. And that's what makes it fun. So over the next few weeks that I'm going to be testing this camera, I'm going to try it in various different scenarios. I will get the grips from Sigma Singapore. I will get all that kind of stuff from them. But in the meantime, what I think of it, it's fun, man. It's a fun little camera. Anyway, I want to thank Sigma Singapore for allowing me to test drive this. This is not a paid review. Nobody's paid me for this. This is just my initial thoughts on it. But in the full review, I will take it through its paces, different lenses, different accessories, and I will give you the lowdown of what it's like to use. But I'll keep it in layman's terms so you don't need a dictionary to follow me on it, okay? All right, with that, follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. Until the next one, take care.